author of Alcohol Explained and Alcohol Explained 2. Hi, William.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, been waiting for ages to get on here. Sat nice and peacefully, haven't I? No, I've just gone in through the door to do some work today, so on the last minute as ever. We thought we'd just pop on and talk to everybody just for 10 or 15 minutes, a little bit about sleep and alcohol. And particularly at this time during lockdown, I'm seeing a lot of news articles about people having really vivid dreams and about interrupted sleep, and that's being blamed on stress and anxiety and kind of worry and unknown. And when we're getting these tips of how to sleep better, it's saying things like drink a milky drink or do a little bit of exercise, do a bit of meditation. But there's absolutely no mention or very little mention of the impact of alcohol on sleep. So we thought you could shed a bit of real truth on that for us, William, if that's all right.
Absolutely, yeah. So the basic mechanism with alcohol, which I've mentioned many times, but I'll go through it again now for completeness. So alcohol is a chemical depressant, so it decreases or inhibits nerve activity. Okay, that's the basic thing. It's like an anesthetic or a sedative. So mentally and chemically, it calms things down. Okay, but your brain tries to maintain sort of a chemical balance. It's called homeostasis, and it's this sort of delicate internal balance. So when you drink alcohol, your brain increases its sensitivity so that it can work under the sedating effects of the alcohol. Okay, because your brain doesn't want to be sedated, it wants to work at its optimum level. So if you take a chemical sedative like alcohol, it increases its sensitivity so that it can work despite the alcohol. Okay, so the more you drink alcohol, the better it becomes and the more proficient it becomes at countering it. And this is what tolerance is. This is how we can drink more and more alcohol as the years go by. But the problem is when the alcohol wears off, you're then left overly sensitized. So that manifests in like anxiety and in extreme cases, depression and the shakes. But all it is, when you try and sedate your brain with alcohol, your brain becomes more sensitive so that it can work still under that sedating effect, so that then when the alcohol wears off, it's left overly stimulated. So that, and as I say, that's what people refer to as hangxiety, that kind of anxious feeling you get after an alcoholic drink wears off. Okay, so that's alcohol and a bit about how your brain works. Then moving on to sleep. So a lot of people think that sleep is just about lying down and dropping unconscious for X number of hours and getting up and feeling fine. Okay, that's not how sleep works at all. You go through different stages of sleep. So there's REM sleep, there's deep sleep, there's light sleep, there's all these different stages. And the most important differentiating factor between the different stages of sleep is how deeply unconscious you are. Okay, so deep sleep, as you'd expect, that's what you think, that's what most people think of as sleep, where they're just really dead to the world and don't react to anything. But there's something also called, for example, REM sleep. Now, when they've studied REM sleep and attached sensors to people when they're asleep, when they go through REM sleep, the brain has lit up almost as if they're fully awake. So it's a bit of a strange area of sleep. There's a lot we as humans don't understand about sleep. And no one really knows why REM sleep is so important, but it is crucial. They've done tests where they've had rats and they've deprived them of REM sleep, and it's actually killed them within a few weeks. So the point with sleep we need to bear in mind is we don't understand a lot about it, but you do go through certain cycles, and the cycle's main differentiating factor is being deeply unconscious to almost fully awake and back again. And you go through and through these different cycles. When you go through the cycles naturally, which will involve all the different types of sleep, going through different cycles of them through during the course of the night, that's when you wake up feeling really refreshed and ready to go. Now, the problem is when you drink alcohol, for the first part of the evening, you're overly sedated, so your brain can't get you up into REM sleep. So you're asleep, but you're not going through the sleep cycles you need to go through in order to awake fully refreshed. Now, the problem is the second part of the night's sleep, when the alcohol has worn off and you're left just with that overly stimulated brain, you can't sleep at all, or if you do, it's very, very light sleep. It's almost just drowsy, just snoozing more than actual sleep. And that's why a lot of people wake up, they find when they drink, they wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and they can't get back to sleep, and they feel really, that's the time they lie awake worrying about things. All that is, that's the direct chemical effect from the alcohol wearing off. You're less overly sensitized and overly stimulated, so you can't sleep at all. And you're just left there worrying. So that's really where we are with alcohol. I think the point to bear in mind as well, advising people to cut down is not really going to help, because any kind of disruption to your normal chemical processes in your brain is going to disrupt your sleep cycle. So really the best advice is don't drink at all. Let your brain do what it does best, which is work naturally.
So even after 1 or 2 drinks, you're going to have that same thing. Even it might be to a lesser effect, but it's still going to happen, which is why people who have 1 drink or 2 drinks will say, well, I'm not hungover, I'm just tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just that thing of, you just haven't slept properly. And it's probably worth jumping in as well, just to mention that if you're used to drinking to a certain level, so let's say every day you drink 1 or 2 bottles of wine, let's just say 1 bottle of wine, your brain is used to recalibrating to become oversensitized to work through the alcohol in 1 bottle of wine. So if you suddenly say to yourself, okay, look, it's not doing my sleep any good, and you just have 1, say, small glass of wine, your brain's used to recalibrating to a bottle. So it's resensitizing in the expectation of the alcohol in a whole bottle. So if you just have a glass, you're almost going straight to the oversensitization place. And that's why when people are drinking at a certain level and then they try and reduce it, they find they sleep even worse than they ever have done before, because they haven't yet recalibrated to that smaller amount. So actually, in some ways, cutting down your alcohol in the short term can leave you in a worse place than if you just carried on at that level.
So if you stop altogether, then there is going to be a period where your sleep is really unsettled, isn't there? Because you're trying to adjust to not having that sedative in your body.
Yeah, so exactly right. Yeah, so how it works is, so when you stop drinking, there's a few stages you have to go through before you get back to normal. Obviously, the first thing is the alcohol's got to leave your system. But after the alcohol's left your system, your brain's got to get back to normal, because don't forget, when the alcohol leaves, that's when you're in that anxious, anxiety, oversensitization stage. And that's when you find it very difficult to fall asleep. Then when that leaves, that's kind of when you start to get back to normal if you're not a regular drinker. And this is where we just need to split into 2 slightly. So if you're someone who maybe just drinks at weekends, the alcohol leaves your system, your brain gets back to normal, then it can take a few nights to get back into a normal sleeping routine, because sleeping it's like a habit, it's a pattern. So if you set your alarm for, I don't know, 2 in the morning for the next 5 nights, chances are, if you turned it off on night 6, you'd still wake up at that time. You become used to it. So if you're constantly interrupting your sleep, you not only need to have the alcohol leave your system and for your brain chemistry to get back to normal, you then need a few nights to actually fall back into a proper sleeping routine. If you're a regular drinker, there's another stage you need to go through, because firstly, the alcohol's got to leave your system, then your brain chemistry's got to return to normal. But if you're drinking most days and regularly, your brain is almost constantly overstimulated. It's going through the increased stimulation stage, because the alcohol almost doesn't wear off, because it takes up to 36 hours for the alcohol to leave your body. So if you're drinking nightly, your brain's almost constantly on overdrive. So that when you do stop, it's almost like as if you're drinking 7 or 8 cups of coffee a day and you cut it out, you go through a period of feeling really tired. So for regular drinkers, they can expect to have maybe a day or so where they sleep very badly and can't sleep, but then a period after that where they're tired all the time, and they can be sleeping like 10, 12 hours a night and still need to nap during the day. They then need that to sort of even out. So there's 2 slightly different procedures depending on whether you're a regular drinker or a sort of a binge drinker.
So how long do you reckon it is then for a regular drinker to sleep normally again?
It will
How long
depend
does it
on
take?
the individual and lots of things, and a lot of what people do advise around sleep is correct, like exercise and correct diet and all the rest of it. So it will depend on that. But usually you should be getting back to a normal sleeping routine. The earliest would probably be about 2 weeks, and the outside should be about a month. So if you're, and obviously it depends how heavily you're drinking as well. I mean, if you're on a bottle of wine a night, it's very different to if you're on like 2 or 3 bottles of spirits a day.
Yeah.
So it depends on that as well. But most people should be really seeing the benefits after about a month. A lot of people who are regular drinkers, and they firstly complaining that they can't sleep, and then they're complaining that they're tired all the time.
Yeah.
Quite often they find it's almost like it's immediate. It's such a big difference. They suddenly just wake up one day and they just feel different. They feel much better than they ever did when they was drinking, because they've finally got to that point where their brain chemistry is back to normal. They've just had a really good night's sleep, and they're waking up feeling essentially how we who don't drink feel all the time. But when you're drinking, you don't appreciate how big a difference it is to your quality of life.
What about people who genuinely have problems with insomnia? Because I know people who claim to drink because it knocks them out. They still wake up in the middle of the night, but what they wrongly think is that having a few drinks before bedtime is giving them a bit of quality sleep before the 2 a.m., 3 a.m. rise. So how's that work?
So that comes on almost to the same issues we have when we're talking about mental health, which is alcohol often covers these problems, so we kind of use it to mask them. So if you've got a sleep problem, alcohol isn't the answer, because alcohol doesn't give you the sleep you need. It gives you too deep sleep to begin with, and then no sleep later on in the night. So you may have a genuine sleep problem, but you need to find a solution to it. And alcohol isn't the solution. It never is for anyone, because alcohol, for the reasons I've mentioned, doesn't aid sleep. It aids unconsciousness, but it doesn't actually aid sleep.
I wish we could tell everybody this. Why is everybody not listening?
We're trying.
We are trying.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well, so for regular drinkers, they, as mentioned, if they stop alcohol on day one, they sleep worse than ever. So they very much have a really deeply held belief that alcohol aids sleep, because when they're drinking, they sleep. And when they don't drink, they sleep really badly, because people, at the end of the day, they may stop for a day or two. They don't stop for 3 or 4 weeks and really reap the benefits. But it does take that. It's not a short-term solution. I mean, I used to drink heavily at weekends and genuinely thought, I recover from the hangover on like Monday, Tuesday, sleep well sort of Wednesday, maybe Thursday, and I kind of then would feel all right towards the end of the week. But until you quit, you don't realise it doesn't work that way. You need a few days to get back into a normal sleeping pattern. And then if you haven't slept properly because you've been drinking for the last decade, you don't catch up on that sleep in one night. It takes a few nights to get back into it.
So doing our 30-day experiment, Lisa.
Yeah, that's a really good. I think routine is important as well. Having like a nighttime routine, if people are scrolling on the phones before they go to bed, that I find that makes a big difference to me. And just as important as a nighttime routine, I think a morning one is as well. You agree?
I do.
Yeah,
I do. And I think.
No, sorry. So another thing that's really useful, people do mention exercise. Exercise is a fantastic one, but if you can, do it earlier in the day, because when you exercise, you get your adrenaline and the oxygen goes through your system, so it makes you feel really awake. So try and exercise as early in the day as you can, because it then tires you out for the evening. But exercising too late in the day actually wakes you up a bit. But another thing people, I think, probably don't appreciate is the effect that diet has, because we as a nation tend to have our main meal in the evening. Now, if you're eating a really heavy, so digestion, you've got like, I can't remember what it is, 14 foot of intestine for food to travel through, and it's traveled through by muscles literally squeezing it through your intestine. So if you eat a large meal at bedtime, all this sort of internal muscle movement is going on while you're trying to sleep. And obviously when food is digested, it creates heat as well. So that can disturb sleep quite badly. So actually, if possible, exercise earlier in the day. And if you do eat a main meal, try and have it lunchtime and something much lighter in the evening. And try not to, because that's another thing, we tend to sit on the sofa in front of the TV and just stuff our faces all evening, which is, again, something really bad for sleep, because you can fall asleep, but you're not sleeping properly because of all this stuff going on. It's constantly interrupting your sleep.
It's habit, that as well. I think a lot of people, when they do stop drinking, replace it with
sugary foods
and sitting
and
there.
that stimulates you as well, the sugar alone, because of the way it's digested. But the Wrangler used to call it, actually, when I used to teach it, rest and digest. And you know, like, you're not resting at all. Like you say, there's absolutely loads of energy being produced just through that peristalsis, that movement of food through the system. So yeah, it's a good point, because it's not one I actually take on board myself. I stuff my face at 5 onwards. But it is a really good point. I think the other thing is,
I'm so confused. Will you say that word again?
Peristalsis.
Like, I was gone then, because she used a big word and I was like,
you do know it.
No, I don't know what it means.
Moving the food.
But I'm now saying it because other people might watch and not know what it means.
Just moving. It's just the muscles squeezing the food
right
through the digestive system all the way down. So, and I think the other thing to sort of say about, and the last thing to sort of say about sleep is, when you drink, your brain learns, I think I'm right in saying this, I'd like you to add to this, your brain learns to rely on the alcohol to switch off and to start to wind you down. So when you stop drinking, your brain has to relearn to produce that balance of chemicals that allow you to wind down before sleep. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when you come towards sleep, your brain starts, sedating itself, basically, to bring you into sleep, which again is why a routine's really good.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it all the time, your brain then starts to learn that in this situation, it starts to wind down. So, you go turn the lights down a bit and get rid of the white light on the screen and on the phones and all the rest of it, and just relax. And that's when your brain then starts to move you towards sleep. Now, if every night you've been using alcohol as that sedative to get you off into sleep, your brain doesn't bother going through that process itself. So exactly that, you need to then, it can be a few nights before your brain starts to realise, oh, I've got to do this job myself because I haven't got this outside chemical that's doing the job for me.
Quite complicated, isn't it?
Oh, there's a lot goes on in our bodies, isn't there? I woke up the other night, my eldest daughter came back. And she slept in my bed the other night. She's 21 and she's like, can I sleep with you? It's a bit weird. And
not weird, it's lovely.
But I woke up in the night, like, talking, and then I realised I was talking, but I didn't want her to know that I was talking, so I tried to get out of it while I was awake. It was a really weird moment. But it did make me think, like, there's a lot goes on, isn't there, asleep? Like William said before, we really don't know even half of it, do we? Like, where do we go?
That's what you go everywhere. She goes
Yeah.
everywhere. She tells me about it. She actually does wander around in her sleep.
Yeah, the trouble is when you start talking about sleep, I've explained this a few times to people, and then they start going, "Oh yeah," and then they're like, "Oh, well, I have these," like talking about vivid dreams, and what does that mean? So I don't know. I haven't got all the answers. But I think the simplest way,
yeah, just stop drinking.
I just know the alcohol bit. The rest of it's just all whatever. Oh, that's great, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much, William. And I think definitely what I've got out of this as well, and that I need to start doing again, because I think I go through phases of it, is getting into a routine again at night and settling down. It's a little bit like treating yourself
a bit like a baby.
Like a toddler again, and like having a bath and nice warm drink and turning the lights
and
on.
not having hot chocolate.
Yeah, no hot
My
chocolate.
takeaway has to be the food thing, and just to eat the majority of my food at lunchtime.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that one.
Said and done, but
thank you.
Thank you so much, William. It's been lovely speaking to you, as always.
And we'll speak to you on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll see you on Saturday.
yeah, excellent.
See you later.
Bye.